Welcome to Woke News Brief, home of It Sounds Quite a Bit Silly, but unfortunately, it's true news. I'm Daniel Moore, your host, and welcome to my Woke News Brief. And you're probably thinking, what in the world? I thought I was listening to Connecting the Gap. Well, I am Daniel Moore, the host of Connecting the Gap podcast. And for those of you that follow me there, I've kind of mentioned a time or two that I was going to be adding something to my lineup for my podcast. And I'm going to explain a little bit today about why I am doing this to start this off before we get into it. And then I'm going to relay quite a bit of news items to you that you may or may not have been aware of what happened. And so my intention is here is we are going to be cutting through the noise to get you the news that for the most part is hidden and not broadcasted. And you're probably thinking, okay, I don't like politics. I don't like hearing the news when it's bad news. I don't like listening to all this stuff that's going on in society out there today. And I totally understand that. I completely do. I don't like having to listen to the news and see what's going on either. But if you remember, in the Bible, it tells us that in the last days, there's going to come times of difficulty. For people's going to be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having the appearance of godliness, but denying its power. And the Bible tells us in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 17, that we are to avoid such people. Well, how are we going to know who those people are? If we don't follow the news and we don't watch what's going on in society today and all the things that are taking place, the right side is fighting against the left side, and the left side, unfortunately, has taken this country by storm. They're doing everything that they can to try to tear down the terminologies and the ways that we like to look at our lives and living biblically and the way that God wants us to live, and they are totally opposite and totally against anything that has to do with biblical living. So the first thing I want to do here is you're probably saying, well, what is woke? Some of you may not know what this terminology is, and you may not quite understand exactly what woke means. Well, looking up on the Wiktionary, there is a definition for woke, and basically it is a person who is woke or holding left-wing views or attitudes. And another way to look at this, woke culture promotes tolerance and better overall for our fight for social justice and greater inclusivity because participating in discourse promotes a kind of cultural awakening. Cultural awakening is the awareness of your culture, your social situation, and others different from you. Well, that sounds pretty cool. If you really sit there and listen to what that is saying and try to work your way through what was just put there with those terms, it actually doesn't sound that bad. But the whole problem of the matter is the ways that things are going woke today is basically completely against the biblical way of living, the way that God created us. And as Christians, it's our responsibility to pray for our country, to pray for our leadership, and to stand up for what is right. We have many people today, as I've been talking to different ones and asking different people what they know about the news and what's going on out there in the world today. A lot of people have no clue about what is taking place when it comes to the woke side of things, to what the left is trying to throw at us on the right and trying to tear down every belief and standard that we have ever had. And it really saddens my heart. It's a weight that's on my shoulders that I really feel like, a lot of times we want to run away from this stuff. We get tired of it. We get sick of it. We don't want to hear it. And I totally understand that. But we can't look at this as if, well, I'm 50 years old, or I'm 65 years old, or I'm 80 years old. I've only got a few years left in this world. I'm just going to hang out. God's going to take me home, or I'm going to go up in the rapture, not to worry about this anymore. And it's somebody else's problem. That would be the fun, easy way to sit back and to approach this whole situation, this whole problem that we're having today. But the issue is we still have kids and grandkids, and barring the fact that Jesus doesn't come back and take us home just yet, our kids still have to grow up. What kind of a world are we leaving for our kids and our grandchildren as they're growing up and becoming adults on their own? If we don't stand up for what's bad right now and what's against the Bible, what's unbiblical, and what the Democratic Party is putting out there, the platforms that they are trying to put into place to totally deconstruct the Christians, the Christianity, the churches, we are not going to be doing what God has called us to do and the duty that He has put upon us as Christians. We're going to be leaving something horrible for our kids and our grandkids to have to navigate themselves through. And if we're not careful, the schools, the colleges, the workplaces, the different areas that they end up walking through in life could potentially brainwash them and cause them to flip their views. If us as adults that are here now don't stand up and take a stand for what is going on out there and have a complete understanding what Satan is trying to do. That's the whole basis of this, quite honestly. Satan is behind everything woke. Anything that's going on today with the transgenderism, the gay agenda, the drag queens, the Black Lives Matter movement, all of these things that are taking place that causes riots, that causes danger to people, that destroys things, causes murders. All this stuff that's taking place is very demonic, and Satan is behind every bit of it. And I feel like in the society that we're in now, there are a few places and a few people out there that are sharing this news that isn't heard very, very often. We know that the media, their whole goal is to put out there what they want people to see. They put out there what people want to hear, because most of our media is very left-leaning. They don't lean to the right. They are totally against us as well. So a lot of the stuff that takes place, it'll hit Twitter for a moment and then it fades into obscurity. There might be some news outlets out there that actually do broadcast this, but it's not your main news outlets that everybody has access to. There's lots of right-winged news outlets that are out today, but you have to have certain devices to be able to watch their newscast, or you got to be on the internet. There's a lot of things that have to take place in order for people to be able to see some of this news. So one of my goals with this portion of my podcast, I am still doing Connecting the Gap, and I will continue to do that. However, every once in a while, what I want to do is I want to throw in a woke news brief just to keep you guys aware, all the ones that follow my podcast. I want you to be aware of the battle that we're fighting. I want you to be aware of the things that we are coming up against. I can do Bible study every week, and we can walk our way through the Word and totally get new things and, get new nuggets from Scripture and grow in our faith and grow in our walk with Christ. But if we don't take that to the world and fight these battles and fight against Satan and the things that he's trying to throw at us, it really does no good at all. We are only building up our biblical knowledge. We're only building up our biblical library in our head and getting to know what God's Word says and understand it, which is a great thing. But we also have a battle that we are waging, and we cannot fail on that side of the responsibility that God has given us. And so I want to try to make you guys aware. I want to throw a lot of news items out there off and on. It won't be probably maybe once a month, once every other month or so. It's not going to be a continual thing that I will be doing on a regular basis, like more frequently, but it is something that I want to do on a regular basis here and there. I want to throw some of these in, and I just encourage you, don't turn it off. Don't flip off the switch. As disgusting as some of these news articles are, and as horrendous as some of these things are that are taking place today, you need to be aware as a Christian what battle we are fighting. It's not like it was back when you were a kid. It's not like it was back when I was a kid. I wish all the time that I could go back to the 80s when I grew up. I look at that now and I think, man, that was so peaceful back then. And even back then there was stuff going on, but it seemed like there wasn't a care in the world. It seemed like, that the church was a lot stronger. It seemed like that a lot of people had more respect for the church. And, over time, a lot of that has withered away. And unfortunately, Satan has gotten his clamps in, and the side that Satan fights on has become very bold. And they are out here to destroy us. They're out here to deceive us. And this is also getting into our churches. And you're going to find out as I go through some of these news articles that I'm going to share with you today. There's some churches out there that are getting infiltrated with Satanism, and the satanic ways that he would want them to go. They are far away from God as they can be. And it's starting at the pulpit. the pastors are standing up there with all of this woke terminology and the transgender and the gay and all the inclusivity and all that kind of thing. And one thing that I do want to say, this is not a hate podcast. I love everybody. God wants us to love everybody just as he loves them. And I do. This has nothing to do with hating anyone. But we can love the sinner but hate the sin. And that's what we have to do. We have to pray to God that he would, give us the open eyes and give us the capabilities and the wisdom to approach these things and try to fight them in a way that a Christian should fight. But it's time for us to pick up our sword. We've been passive for way too long. And it's time that we get out there and start doing something about all this stuff that is taking place. They are very, very aggressive on their side on the left. And they're doing everything that they can to tear us down on the right. And we're sitting here just letting them stomp all over us and letting them do whatever they want. And that's not what God's called us to do. God is a warrior. Jesus is a warrior. He's called us to be warriors. And we need to be doing that in whatever capacity that he's given us to be able to do so. I just ask that as I go through these, your anger may boil. You may get upset. It may shock you with some of the things that I am going to share today because you haven't really been keeping up on what's going on. But as I go through these stories, keep in mind, one of our biggest weapons is prayer. We need to pray for these people that they will totally understand the goodness of God, that they will understand that God did create them. He created them for a purpose, and that there is a reason that we are here, and we do have an eternity. They have an eternity. We need to be concerned about their hearts and their souls. And so we should always make sure that we pray for each and every person that's involved in this deception that Satan has put upon their lives. I'm going to start here by kind of giving you an idea of how far the woke side has went. Back in 2019, dictionary.com added around 300 words plus to the dictionary, and a lot of those terms were derived from wokeism. To give you an example how far out there and crazy this is, they actually put a word in there and added one for woman. Okay, but the woman is not spelled woman anymore. It is now spelled WOMXN. Defining WOMXN as used, especially in intersectional feminism, as an alternative spelling to avoid the suggestion of sexism, perceived in the sequences MAN and MEN. So in other words, they took the man and the men off of woman and women, and to be inclusive of trans and non-binary women, whatever that is. So that kind of gives you an idea exactly where we're at today. If you go to dictionary.com, you will find a lot of additional words that were never there before, and you're going to find out that a lot of those words actually have to do with wokeism. It's crazy. I mean, I look at some of this. I'm 50 years old, and I thought as I was growing up, I thought, okay, I know all this is coming, but it's going to be in the next generation. I don't really think I'm going to see all of this, and I'm telling you, this stuff is moving at the speed of light, at the speed of sound. I mean, it is unreal how fast this has unfolded before our very eyes. And I think it's caught a lot of Christians off guard. I truly do. And I think that it's time that we take this back. So please bear with me and please listen to these episodes. It takes me a little bit of time to put these together, but that's how important that I think this is. I think that we need to be aware as Christians what is going on in the world around us that the media is not sharing. And so this week, we're going to have our first episode of Woke News Brief, and I'm going to go through a lot of news stuff here that I'm going to share with you, and I might do some commentary a little bit here on some of them. Try not to go too long with this. I will tell you I have an abundance of news stuff that I want to share eventually. I've got quite a stack here today, and this is actually from probably a couple months ago. This is not even super current. I literally get news feeds every day that is just swamped with this kind of stuff that is taking place, and it would just totally disgust you and blow your mind to see the things that happen on a daily basis here in our world if you're really keeping up with this. But I just want you to see where we're at as Christians, how our Christian schools are being targeted, our churches are being targeted, us as Christians are being targeted. And this is one of the best ways that I know how to do this and try to help you to be aware as a Christian. Also, one thing that I want to throw out there before I get started, if this type of thing does concern you, and here recently we had Budweiser, the issue with Bud Light, where they put the transgender figure on their can. I'm not even going to say that person's name because they don't need any more flair and notice out there in the news. They've had plenty of that here lately, and so I'm not going to say their name, but a transgender guy, his picture was put on a Bud Light can, which actually Bud Light caught a lot of flack from that, which they should have. I'm not a drinker anyway, but they should have never have done that. And so they are now considered a woke company. Disney, we're going to talk about Disney a little bit today. They've got a ton of stuff that they've been doing that would make Walt Disney roll over in his grave. They're trying to indoctrinate our children right now with satanic and gay and trans terminologies, and these new cartoons and things that are coming out. You really, really, really need to be looking through those before you let your kids watch them, if you still intend to let them watch Disney. I prefer to stay away from it completely. But a lot of these companies are going woke. And what that means is they're accepting this trans, they're accepting this gay lifestyle, and they're starting to push it into the things that they put out. And they're trying to infiltrate the world with their product, and it's saturated in wokeism. Well, there's a way now, if you're a Christian and you're really, really concerned about this, there's a way that you can sign up to be alerted when a new company goes woke. And the way that you can do that, you can go to consumersresearch.org/woke alert. That's all one word, woke alert. And there you can sign up for woke alerts. You can enter your phone number. It's a conservative-minded shopper index, and it will send you text updates on companies deemed to have strayed too far left in their marketing and other strategies. Many corporations are putting progressive activists and their dangerous agendas ahead of the customers. Again, and ahead of us, the people that are normal. They'll only succeed if we look the other way. We've got to make sure that we stay on top of this, and anytime a company goes woke like that, we really need to boycott them. Nike, I'm done with Nike at this point. I will say that the last time they've done a few things here recently over the last few years that really disgusted me, but I kept staying with them. Well, now they've also allowed a transgender to start modeling their sports bras, and it's a guy. He has no business having a sports bra on, and they're letting him be their model. So I'm done with Nike. So there's a lot of these companies out there that are transitioning to this, and if you're really, really concerned about this and you want to try to make sure you put your dollars to good use, and you don't want to support a company that is satanic in the ways that they do operation, then sign up for the Woke Alert today by going to consumersresearch.org/woke alert. And you can put your number in there, and they will keep you updated on woke companies as they come across the board. Well, the first news item I want to share with you today, a Christian school is banned after forfeiting a game against a girls' team with a male student. A Vermont religious school that withdrew its girls' basketball team from a playoff game because a biological male who identifies as a transgender student was on the roster of the opposing team is now banned from future tournaments. The Vermont Principals Association announced that Mid-Vermont Christian School's decision to forfeit its February 21st game because it believed a trans player jeopardizes the fairness of the game and the safety of our players makes it ineligible to play in any of its tournaments for any sport going forward. The VPA is the governing body for Vermont school sports and activities for member schools. The VPA again reiterates its ongoing support of transgender student athletes as not only a part of building an inclusive community for each student to grow and thrive, but also as a clear expectation by Vermont state law in the Agency of Education Best Practices and in VPA policy regarding transgender student athletes, the governing body said in a statement. MVCS never gave the VPA a reason for pulling out of the game, but the rationale was posted 4 days later by a New Hampshire outlet called the Valley News. We believe playing against an opponent with a biological male jeopardizes the fairness of the game and the safety of our players. MVCS head of school Vicky Fogg wrote to the outlet, the Bennington Banner reported, allowing biological males to participate in women's sports sets a bad precedent for the future of women's sports in general. The VPA's letter touched on Fogg's justification in its decision to boot the religious school for violating VPA policies and Vermont state law. Specifically, the school's actions do not meet the expectations of the VPA's first and second policy, commitment to racial, gender fair, and disability awareness and policy of gender identity, respectively, the letter said. Yet the Vermont Agency of Education appears to allow exceptions. Generally, students should be permitted to participate in physical education and sports in accordance with the student's gender identity. Participation in competitive athletic activities and sports will be resolved on a case-by-case basis, the department's guidelines read, Fox News reported. Next up, Biden says he had epiphany about gay marriage in high school. When it comes to telling lies, there's no better than President Biden. He's told some whoppers, from battles with the gang member known as Corn Pop to make-believe friendships he had with an Amtrak train conductor. But his latest fib is quite a doozy. President Biden told an interviewer that he had an epiphany on gay marriage more than 60 years ago. I can remember exactly where my epiphany was, Biden told Daily Show guest host Cal Penn. Hadn't thought much about it, to tell you the truth, and I was a senior in high school, and my dad was dropping me off. And I remember about to get out of the car, and I looked to my right, and two well-dressed men in suits kissed each other. I mean, like gave each other a kiss. And then one looked like he was heading into the DuPont building. One looked like he was heading to the Hercules Corporation building. And I'll never forget it. I turned and looked at my dad, and he said, "Joey, it's simple. They love each other. It's simple. No, I'm not joking. It's simple. They love each other. And it's never been. It's just that simple. It doesn't matter whether it's same-sex or a heterosexual couple. You should be able to be married. So what is the problem?" Well, apparently, that's when Joe Biden decided to affirm same-sex marriage. To be clear, the president graduated high school in 1961. But that's simply not true. It's revisionist history. In 1973, Biden opposed gays in the military and said they were a security risk in the government. In the 1990s, he voted for the Defense of Marriage Act, and in 2008, he opposed redefining marriage. Mediaite reports Biden also supported a measure to defund schools that presented homosexuality as, quote, a positive lifestyle alternative, unquote. Using the vernacular of the far left, Biden's voting record could be defined as anti-gay and homophobic, definitely intolerant for a Democrat. So Biden is either confused about his past record or he's intentionally lying about it. Either way, it's not a good look. During the same interview, he also commented on the recent activity going on in Florida legislature to protect kids from child body mutilation and surgeries. He was quoted, "What's going on in Florida is, as my mother would say, close to sinful. I mean, it's just terrible what they're doing." The Democrat president said, appearing to refer to a bill in the Sunshine State protecting children from transgender medical procedures. It's not like, a kid wakes up one morning and says, I decided to want to become a man or I want to become a woman, Biden said. I mean, what are they thinking here? They're human beings. They love, they have feelings, that have inclinations that are. I mean, to me it is, I don't know, it's cruel. And the way we do it is we make sure we pass legislations like we passed on same-sex marriage. You mess with that, you're breaking the law, and you're going to be held accountable. So this is where our president is at on letting children be mutilated to become a boy or a girl after they were born the opposite sex. Tennessee Democrats are enraged over inmate baptisms. The Tennessee Department of Children's Services is facing controversy over a recent Instagram video. It showed boys, their faces blurred, being baptized inside a chapel at the Wilder Detention Center. "We thank God today for these young men are getting baptized," the unnamed preacher told the boys. "You are the architect of your future." Well, one news organization accused DCS of theocratic behavior. They quoted an unnamed pastor who said the video was propaganda. State Senator London Lamar condemned DCS. She said she was annoyed that the state was forcing religion on citizens. I'm always annoyed at how the state forces religion on citizens. I'm a proud Christian, but what I know is many of the laws we introduce and or pass are not of God, i.e. such as lynching, discrimination, and greed, the far-left Democrat wrote on Twitter. There's no evidence whatsoever that anyone was forced to get baptized. Senator Lamar claims to be a proud Christian. If so, she would know that those who profess Christ typically get baptized as a public display of their new faith. And she's not the only one who got triggered by our Lord. Baptism does not repair chronic abuse, unsafe living conditions, poor education, or utter disregard for the mental and emotional health of those struggling youth in state custody, Democrat State Senator Heidi Campbell said. Another Democrat lawmaker took issue that the photos and video of the baptism were made public. Did they get these young people's permission to post this? I have had former youth in custody tell me their photos, videos were used by DCS without permission and they felt exploited, State Representative Gloria Johnson said. Who knew there were so many godless heathens living in the volunteer state? Greetings from the Christo-fascist Republic of Tennessee, wrote one person on Twitter. This is government promotion of religion, and it is unconstitutional, another wrote. Not even trying to hide your proselytizing. DCS has faced well-deserved controversy in recent days, but this is one program that should be saluted. And shame on the Democrats and other godless heathens who seem hell-bent on stopping these troubled young men from making a public statement of their faith in Jesus Christ. I mean, who would have ever thought the day would have come that we would get baptized or have a baptism take place that would actually be shown in media, and it would create such backlash? I mean, that kind of shows the state of where our country is at right now. As we move on today, MSNBC has been triggered by Top Gun Maverick. Top Gun Maverick has triggered columnist Zishan Aleem of MSNBC to call it, quote, the most insidious movie at the Oscars, unquote, and warns against, quote, canonizing literal military propaganda, unquote. Conservatives have praised the movie for bringing American exceptionalism back to the big screen and storing pride in the American military. But Aleem is concerned its 6 Oscar nominations will salute the American military and feed an appetite for war. Top Gun is as insidious as it is entertaining, Aleem wrote. It does not merely revive a forgotten human-centered spectacle, it also beckons for a return to accepting the American war machine as a beacon of virtue and excitement. It's a poisonous kind of nostalgia, one that smuggles love of endless war into a celebration of live action. Aleem, who is American-born, warns the movie is too tidy with the U.S. military. Top Gun is literal propaganda. In exchange for access to military aircraft, the producers of the movie agreed to allow the Defense Department to include its own key talking points in the script, he wrote. Perhaps equally important, the script had to be written in a manner that flatters the military in order to secure the buy-in of the Pentagon. Disney's Avatar: The Way of Water is the only movie to have grossed more in 2022 than Top Gun. I don't object to anyone's enjoyment of the film, but I hope it tanks at the Oscars, Aleem wrote. It's possible to make thrilling action without so brazenly priming the public for warfare. Aleem denounced the movie for its absurd salute to defending the military-industrial complex and quoted, "Don't think, just do," as a fitting slogan for the U.S. foreign policy establishment, consistently eager to intervene in other countries without thinking carefully about whether it's right or if it will be effective. Another war-related, I guess you could say, article that I'm going to share with you. You guys remember Jane Fonda from back in the day. A lot of you older ones remember her and what she did. Well, Jane Fonda was on The View here recently, and she was recommending murdering pro-lifers. Jane Fonda caused national outrage after she suggested that one way to deal with pro-lifers was to murder them. Fonda delivered that stunning statement on The View, which should be taken off the air in my opinion, saying she's quote-unquote thought of murder when asked how she recommends to fight for abortion rights beyond marching and protesting. Let's listen to her make this point on The View. Here's cut 1.
Well, I think all the stuff that's gone on with the change in laws and the the backsliding in the country is pretty terrifically awful.
It's going backwards.
And we have
Except, though,
yeah.
we have experienced many decades now of having agency over our body, of being able to determine when and how many children to have. We know what that feels like. We know what that's done for our lives. We're not going back. I don't care what the laws are. We're not going back.
I think the women will rise up.
That's the activist.
That's Jane
speaking, and she probably will get a Nobel Prize.
But it's the truth.
Very soon.
It is the truth. But we're not going to do it.
Besides
we're gonna
marching and protesting, what else do you suggest?
Well, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not a miraculous. What did you say?
Murder.
She's kidding. Wait a second. She's just kidding.
Don't say that. That's
you don't know. They'll pick up on that and
yeah,
just run
that's
with
the
it.
worst.
She's just kidding.
Well, let me talk to you about. Let's move on and talk about Jane's.
She then came out on March 11th, 2023 with this statement. While women's reproductive rights are a very serious issue and extremely important to me, my comment on The View was obviously made in jest, Fonda told Fox News in a statement. My body language and tone made it clear to those in the room and to anyone watching that I was just using hyperbole to make a point. Women across the country are facing real threats when it comes to our bodies, and people lose faith in our mission to protect women when others choose to focus on tangential issues and passing jokes instead of the actual problem at hand. We're not going back, Fonda said, referring to the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade. I don't care what the laws are, we're not going back. When pressed on how to change the ideology of the opponents, Fonda suggested murder. Representative Anna Paulina Luna, a Republican in Florida, warned Capitol Police about the potential call to violence against conservatives. I have notified Capitol Police of Jane Fonda's call to murder pro-life politicians, she wrote. Calling for the murder of a pro-life politician is not only dangerous, but is incredibly sick. This leads to targeting and can result in someone being seriously hurt. I mean, just imagine if Carrie Lake or Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene had suggested on The View that pro-abortion people should be murdered, the FBI would have stormed the set, and by lunchtime, Greene and Lake would have been sharing a cell with QAnon shaman. About guarantee that, if that would have been the other way around. Next in the lineup here, Michigan legislature outlaws discrimination based on gender identity. Violators of Michigan's new LGBTQ plus discrimination law could be fined up to $50,000 according to new legislation passed by the State House and Senate Governor Gretchen Whitmer. It is set to be signed. The law passed on partisan lines that makes discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity a punishable offense. Democrats denied religious protections put forth in amendments by Republicans. Anyone convicted of a civil rights violation in Michigan could incur charges of $10,000 for the first violation and up to $50,000 for 2 or more violations within a 7-year period. No one should be fired from their jobs or evicted from their home because of who they are, Whitmer tweeted in response to the legislation passing. I'm proud that we're finally getting it done. The legislation originated with Michigan's Senate President pro tempore Jeremy Moss, a Democrat in Michigan, who celebrated the passing of the legislation on his Twitter account. Moss, along with fellow Democrats in the state Senate, denied amendments from the Republican counterparts that attempted to afford greater religious protections due to concerns that the bill would result in the punishment of people upholding their religious beliefs. Adding sexual orientation and gender identity to the act will not compel a church to marry an LGBTQ couple, stated Moss, but adherents of a religion are required to follow neutral, generally applicable laws. But recent history says otherwise, according to a Daily Wire report. Last summer, Michigan's highest court ruled against 2 businesses who conducted their operations in accordance with their religious beliefs. The Michigan Supreme Court issued the ruling in Rauch World LLC et al. Versus Michigan Department of Civil Rights, based on a similar interpretation of civil rights protections passed Wednesday by the state legislature. The court declared last July that the state's civil rights protection extended to sexual orientation and gender identity. The majority ruled against 2 businesses for refusing services based on their religious beliefs. Rauch World, who refused to host a same-sex wedding, and Uprooted Electrolysis, who refused to give hair removal services to a man identifying as a woman. First Lady Jill Biden and Secretary of State Anthony Blinken presented a biological man from Argentina with an International Woman of Courage Award last month. The biological male Alba Ruda supposedly earned the honor because he is a, quote, transgender woman, unquote, who was kicked out of classrooms, barred for sitting for exams, refused job opportunities, subjected to violence, and rejected by her family. But in the face of these challenges, she worked to end violence and discrimination against the LGBTQ plus community in Argentina. That was quoted according to the State Department. The Biden administration recognized Ruda as one of 11 quote-unquote women from around the world who fight for gender equity. Now, in its 17th year, the Secretary of State's IWOC Award recognizes women from around the globe who have demonstrated exceptional courage, strength, and leadership in advocating for peace, justice, human rights, gender equality and equity, and the empowerment of women and girls in all their diversity, often at great personal risk and sacrifice, a State Department press release said. Starnes Media Group managing editor Caleb Park called it a slap in the face to women. Twitter users were not thrilled with the news that Ruda was given the award either. One Twitter user made the comment, "This basically says that men are better at being women than women are." It's International Women's Day, a good time to remember that Democrats can't even tell you what a woman is, Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders said in a tweet. Other prominent conservatives like podcast host Dana Loesch and commentator Caroline Levitt slammed the First Lady's decision, saying it diminished women, and asked why Democrats are so focused on pushing the trans agenda. Ruda currently works as Argentina's special envoy for sexual orientation and gender identity in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, International Trade and Worship, Fox News reports. Further, the State Department said he actively campaigned to change the name of the National Women's Conference to the Plurinational Conference of Women and Lesbian, Cross-Dresser, Transgender, Bisexual, Intersex, and Non-Binary Persons to include diverse, dissident, and radicalized identities. Disney has removed a beloved song from its daily parade at Disneyland, sanitizing its theme parks of anything that might trigger the woke left. Zippity Doo Dah, a song that has brought countless joy to millions of Americans, has been given the heave-ho after critics said it was racist. It was featured prominently in the 1946 classic Song of the South. The film is set in the post-Civil War South and explores the friendship between a white boy and an elderly black man. Of course, there's nothing remotely racist about Song of the South or Zippity Doo Dah. The song won an Academy Award for Best Original Song, and James Baskett, the star of the film, became the first black man to win an Oscar. It seems to me we should be celebrating the film, not erasing it. Disney CEO Bob Iger has stated that Song of the South is just not appropriate in today's world. Disney World also dismantled Splash Mountain because the ride was based on characters from the movie. If only the Bluebird of Happiness would pay a visit to the cars of those woke busybodies. My oh my, what a wonderful day that would be. A Christian preacher reported to terror police for transgender remarks. A Christian street preacher in the United Kingdom was referred to the UK counter-terrorism police after he remarked that a trans woman was really a man in woman's clothing. The incident, which occurred a year ago, has already resulted in a conviction of harassment in a British court of law with a sentencing of 12 months of community service with 80 hours of unpaid work. According to Breitbart News, David McConnell was preaching at the time of the remarks, which also resulted in the preacher being abused, assaulted, and some of his belongings stolen before he was arrested by British law enforcement for his outward religious beliefs. The Daily Mail has since reported that the preacher was also reported to the UK Prevent Counterterrorism Program over his views, which were deemed to be sufficiently radical for them to be contacted. What has happened to me has been Orwellian and really alarming, McConnell said. When I was told I had been reported to counterterrorism, I just thought, what has happened to this country? The street preacher was immediately concerned when he saw the police station was flying an LGBTQ flag. My role as a Christian preacher is to speak truth and to communicate what the Bible says on a range of issues without compromise, McConnell explained. I believe what the Bible says about how we are born male and female. I'm not aware of any law that says I must use someone's preferred identity that is clearly contrary to their biological reality. According to McConnell's probation officer, the preacher was, quote-unquote, viewed to be persistently and illegally espousing an extreme point of view, with his preaching prompting the government official to routinely liaise with counterterrorism police. Christians across the UK have decided to speak out on the judge's decision to convict the preacher for his beliefs. This case represents a disturbing trend in our society, which is seeing members of the public and professionals being prosecuted and reported as potential terrorists for refusing to celebrate and approve LGBTQ ideology, Andrea Williams, chief executive of the Christian Legal Center, reportedly said regarding this case. The Bible teaches clearly that we are born male and female. This belief and the freedom to express it in public without fear of being arrested or reported as a terrorist to prevent must be protected, she went on to say. With representation from the Christian Legal Center, McConnell is appealing his conviction. An Arizona public school district says they will no longer hire student teachers from a Christian university. The Washington Elementary School District voted unanimously to end a partnership with Arizona Christian University because of the school's religious beliefs. The school district said the university's values posed a threat to the LGBT students. We cannot continue to align ourselves with organizations that starkly contrast our values and say that we legitimately care about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that we legitimately care about all of our families, said School District President Nikki Gomez-Whaley. 3 board members identify as members of the LGBT community, including Tamilia Valenzuela. She wears cat ears and identifies as a bilingual, disabled, neurodivergent, queer Black Latina. Now, I know that's a lot to take in. Well, here is a clip of the recording, actually recorded from that school board meeting. Here's cut 2.
Our vision in Washington Elementary School District is committed to achieving excellence for every child, every day, every opportunity. Every child. When I go to Arizona Christian University's website, and I'm taking this directly from their website, above all else, be committed to Jesus Christ, accomplishing his will and advancing his kingdom on earth as in heaven. Part of their values is influence, engage, and transform the culture with truth by promoting the biblically informed values that are foundational to Western civilization, including the centrality of family, traditional sexual morality, and lifelong marriage between one man and one woman. I want to know how bringing people from an institution that is ingrained in their values that will very directly, 1, impact 3 of your board members who are a part of the LGBTQ community. We have added our pronouns at the dais as solidarity to let our LGBT community know that we stand in making sure that they feel protected. Are we only performing performative solidarity, or are we going to dig deep and actually look at the partnerships that we're doing?
Oh, the horror that a school would hire from a Christian university. If this conversation was taking place in your school district, would you guys be aware of it? This was quoted from the Washington Elementary School District. They said the Washington Elementary School District Governing Board is committed to creating a welcoming environment for all our students, families, and staff. While we recognize the right of individuals to practice their faith, public schools are secular institutions. To that end, the board unanimously voted to discontinue its partnership with the Arizona Christian University, whose policies do not align with our commitment to create a safe space for our LGBTQ+ students, staff, and community. This is not a rejection of any particular faith, as we remain open to partnering with faith-based organizations that share a commitment to equity and inclusion. Unquote. Well, good luck with that. Well, Mrs. Valenzuela says she has a problem with the university's call for their students to be committed to Jesus Christ and to transform culture. Arizona Christian has provided student teachers for the past 11 years without any issues. But board member Kyle Clayton, who is also gay, says they don't want educators to teach through a biblical lens. In other words, Washington Elementary School District is openly discriminating against Christians. The school board's recent decision to ban ACU students from serving as student teachers was done for one reason only: our university commitment to our Christian convictions, said Arizona Christian President Lynn Munsell. That's wrong, it's unlawful, and it will only hurt the district's students. Religious liberty and freedom of conscience are bedrock, American principles. We are exploring our options to defend the rights of our students. Munsell said the university has partnered with the school district for years, and more than 100 students have served in the classroom. Administrators have time and again asked us to send more ACU students because of the quality of our students' work and their love and servant's heart for all. The school board's recent decision to ban ACU students from serving as student teachers was done for one reason only: our university's commitment to our Christian convictions, he said. It's flat-out discrimination. Just consider how the nation would have reacted had the school district banished LGBT staffers from its classrooms. If there's room for teachers who fly the rainbow flag, there must be room for teachers who fly the Christian flag. The Smithsonian's newly proposed American Women's History Museum will contain exhibits honoring biological men who believe they are women. In an interview with the New York Times, the museum's interim director, Lisa Sasaki, said a desire to be inclusive is in the museum's DNA. We have a job to build a museum that's going to serve the public for a very, very long time, Sasaki said. From the DNA of this museum, there has been a desire to be inclusive. Despite not having an officially approved location for the museum, the Smithsonian already has online features for future exhibits. One of them honors Sylvia Rivera, a man who identified as a woman and co-founded a militant group called Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, or STAR for short. Sasaki defended featuring biological men in the exhibits because she says trans women are facing increasing violence and harassment. She added that the museum would not present a singular narrative of what it means to be a woman. The proposed museum has already received $55 million in pledged donations, some of which have come from very high-profile donors and philanthropists. Some of them include, of course, billionaire Bill Gates, ex-wife Melinda French Gates, Walmart heiress Alice Walton, and designer Tory Burch. Together, we will create a museum that celebrates the women who have helped build this country. These donations are pivotal in the realization of this vision, Sasaki said. Shelby County Commissioner Brittany Thornton, a progressive Democrat, said she was triggered by a white Republican commissioner's whiteness. I own the fact that today your whiteness triggered me because it is actually an identity that I recognize postures you differently from me, the black commissioner said during a contentious commission meeting. It comes from privileges that I simply do not have. Her jaw-dropping racist comments came during a debate over whether to spend $5 million in taxpayer money to fund a study that would provide reparations to black citizens of the county. The conversation at hand, though, it's steeped in racial identity. There are just some basic social justice elements to it that we should all be sensitive to, Thornton said. The commission, which is controlled by black Democrats, overwhelmingly approved the measure. It's unclear if the commission will only use money from white taxpayers to fund the study. Today has been a really polarized day. Though some of us in our delegation have never lived a single day as a black person, though some people in our delegation have never lived a single day as a poor black person, that should prohibit you from being able to see a clear opportunity to right some ills, she said. Thornton said she was triggered by Commissioner Amber Mills, a Republican who lives in the Memphis suburbs. I tried to have a conversation with the fellow commissioner, and she felt triggered by my whiteness, Mills said. That's where we are these days. And now we are doing resolutions where certain people get reparations. Mills was one of 3 Republicans to vote against the measure, said she was stunned by outrage over her comments. It's come to a point where our skin color, you can't even have a conversation with people, she said. All this is doing is dividing a community in a desperate time when we really need to unite. But the purpose of reparations is not to unite, it's meant to divide. It's about taking money from one ethnicity and giving it to another. It's unconstitutional and it's immoral. If I'm triggered, it is what it is, Thornton said. A Catholic university in Virginia is under fire from students and alumni for making cuts to its traditional programs to compete with other schools. Marymount University President Irma Becerra supports a controversial plan to eliminate bachelor's degrees in theology and religious studies, philosophy, mathematics, art, history, sociology, English, economics, and secondary education, as well as master's program in English and humanities. The student government president, Ashley Trejo Mejia, wrote a scathing letter to Becerra. Cutting portions of the School of Humanities as well as math and art programs would be detrimental to the diversity of our student body, Mejia said. We fear that removing programs will alter the foundation and identity of Marymount University was built on. Becerra submitted the plan Wednesday, and the board is set to make a decision Thursday. Digital disruption, economic conditions, and the explosion of low-cost online course providers have put pressure on universities to reinvent their institutions in order to compete, Becerra said. Students have more choices than ever for where to earn a college degree, and MU must respond wisely to the demand. She added, over the long term, it would be irresponsible to sustain major and programs with consistently low enrollment, low graduation rates, and lack of potential for growth. Recommendations and decisions on programs marked for elimination are based on clear evidence of student choices and behavior over time. Ariane Economos, an associate professor of philosophy who serves as director of the School of Humanities and the Liberal Arts Core curriculum, spoke out against the plan. If they want to change the mission, then say that, and say what that change is. But getting rid of theology and religious studies at a Catholic university, that doesn't fit with the mission, she told the Chronicle of Higher Education. The majors and programs being gutted will shift funds to more popular majors and initiatives, Fox News reports. Pennsylvania high school teacher is getting lambasted online for labeling kids sexual beings, but the school is defending him. Al Vernaccio has been backed by Friends Central School after reports the English teacher included sexual photos and videos in his curriculum in order to desensitize children to the images of genitalia. Reports have stated the lessons that tend to raise eyebrows outside the school, according to Vernaccio, are a medical research video he shows of a woman ejaculating. Students are allowed to excuse themselves if they prefer not to watch, and a couple of dozen close-up photographs of vulvas and penises. The photos, Vernaccio said, are intended to show his charges the broad range of what's out there. It's really a process of desensitizing them to what real genitals look like, so they'll be less freaked out by their own and one day their partners, the teacher added. Even after concerns from parents, the school board has stated they will firmly stand behind their educator. Here is a clip from a recent talk that he had that was posted online. Here's cut 3.
At my school, I'm responsible for the sexuality education of all of our students, from our youngest students, who are 3 years old in nursery school, up through our 12th graders who are turning 18 and getting ready to leave high school. That's a huge range, but every single one of those kids is a sexual being. They have been since birth. And at every age and stage, we can offer them age-appropriate, transformative sexuality education. I'm only a small part of the village that supports them as they grow. It's not enough that I teach them. We have to teach them. Part of my message today is that we all, no matter what else we do in life, need to find a way to be sexuality educators for the kids in our lives. If we don't step up, others will. And many of those others don't see wholeness and freedom the way we do. One of the things we can celebrate today is how young people have so many more options to consider than simply whether they feel like a boy or a girl, or whether they identify as gay, straight, or bisexual. Our understandings of both gender and orientation have greatly expanded in our culture. And there's an ever-increasing list of labels one can use to describe oneself. To me, this is a great benefit because it allows people, especially young people, to find a more precise way to describe their own experience. What it's also brought about is greater latitude in experimenting with different identities. It's not uncommon today for young people to try out different labels and different pronouns and different relationships in search of their truth.
Al Vernaccio is a nationally renowned and highly respected educator. It is disappointing that his work and our school are being miscast so thoroughly. Friends Central is committed to cultivating our students' intellectual, ethical, and spiritual promise in a world that needs that more than ever, they said in a statement. In a surface video of the teacher, Vernaccio states every single one of these kids is a sexual being. They have been since birth, and at every age and stage, we can offer them age-appropriate transformative sex ed. Students at the University of Illinois Chicago are getting a lesson in the history of pronouns, Campus Reform reports. Reading material includes books like Beyond the Gender Binary and The Pragmatics of Personal Pronouns. The university also provides faculty and staff with a practical guide to non-sexist language. In the spirit of a non-gender specific university, the school has officially banned words like freshman, handyman, and tomboy. Those words are considered sexist. Instead, the university recommends calling handymen odd-job workers, tomboys active children. It's an all-out war on pronouns and a war on common sense. God created male and female. Pronouns are not non-binary, and he cannot become a she. They is not singular, nor is them. Biology is what it is. Finally, professors will no longer bring their wives to a black tie gala at the university. Moving forward, these rubber chicken dinners will be called semi-formal, and your dinner date will be referred to as your spouse. The Acalanes Union High School District has a Director of Student Support, Equity, and Inclusion. This is California tax dollars at work. The other day, the school district hosted an event for staffers, but white people were excluded. Libs of TikTok first reported the story, publishing an email that warned educators not to invite their white peers because of feelings of uneasiness and mistrust. Hello, POCC staff. We are ready for our first coming together in 2023, Lennon McFadder Harris wrote in the email. We are looking forward to seeing our people of color in the district. Please invite any employee of color to this event. The school district said they wanted to create a safe space for people of color. Be reminded that we have avoided inviting people that are not of color, as there remains feelings of uneasiness and mistrust, and we need this to be a safe spot for our people of color, the email continued. Please reach out to me if you have any questions of concerns. Unfortunately, it's a part of nationwide trend in education, literally resegregating people in the name of diversity. Last year, a Colorado grade school hosted a Families of Color playground night. White children were not allowed to take a twirl on the merry-go-round. It's nothing more than taxpayer-funded bigotry and racism. We got to remember, all men are created equal, not just some. A San Francisco committee recommended qualified black residents should receive $5 million in reparations, even though the city never had legal slavery. The 15-member San Francisco African American Reparations Advisory Committee released its hefty recommendations in January as part of a 60-page report that also includes debt forgiveness. Provide a one-time lump sum payment of $5 million to each eligible person, the report reads. A lump sum payment would compensate the affected population for the decades of harms that have been experienced and will redress the economy and opportunity losses that black San Franciscans have endured collectively as the result of both intentional decisions and unintended harms perpetuated by city policy, it added. Eric McDonald, the committee's chair, said it wasn't even something that they calculated. There wasn't a math formula, McDonald said. The Washington Post on Tuesday. It was a journey for the committee towards what could represent a significant enough investment in families to put them on this path to economic well-being, growth, and vitality that should tell slavery and all the policies that flowed from it destroyed. Reparations activists argue the city's policies have negatively impacted black residents. Leaders of the Democrat-run city said the proposal is unrealistic. I wish we had this kind of money in San Francisco's general fund, but we want to maintain the services that exist today. We do not. San Franciscan Supervisor Hillary Rosen said to the San Francisco Chronicle last month. While some residents said cannabis taxes could be used to fund reparations, the San Francisco Standard reports it would only raise a little over $10 million annually. To be eligible for reparations, an applicant must be at least 18 years old, an individual who has identified as Black African American on public documents for at least 10 years. The Star Wars Online fan base, and even actor Mark Hamill, who portrayed Luke Skywalker in the films, have suggested that the iconic character is homosexual. Woke-pedia, the internet hub for Star Wars fandom, added the character to its LGBTQ+ individuals page following the group sparking backlash for adding preferred pronouns to all the characters' listings on the site. On Twitter, Woke-pedia justified the labeling Skywalker as homosexual because of an encounter the character has with another man in a short story written by Sam Maggs called Luke on the Bright Side. Following the announcement, one Twitter user asked Woke-pedia what rationale supported the decision. Woke-pedia's account replied saying, "There is a story in which he felt romantic feelings towards a guy." Bound into the Comics reported that account's reply referred to Mag's story. The outlet added that the short story does not explicitly say Skywalker has these feelings toward the other male character. The sentiment was corroborated by Mark Hamill himself in a 2016 interview with The Sun. The actor said Skywalker's sexuality is up to the interpretation of the audience. He added that if someone thinks the character is gay, then of course he is. Fans are writing and asking all these questions. I'm bullied in school. I'm afraid to come out. They say to me, could Luke be gay? I'd say it is meant to be interpreted by the viewer. If you think Luke is gay, of course he is. You should not be ashamed of it. Judge Luke by his character, not by who he loves, Hamill said. Many fans of the iconic series thought the idea that Skywalker is gay is a bit of a stretch. Even William Shatner, a star of the Star Trek series, posted a tweet implying he doubts Hamill's character is supposed to be homosexual. Luke got married in SW's canon, so unless Tatooine was repressive and he was hiding, it looks like he chose a woman named Mara, Shatner wrote. The Church of England is looking into nixing God as Father or any gender pronouns in prayer in another move to appease the woke mob. This news comes after an exchange within the church's governing body, the General Synod, where a priest asked the body to develop more inclusive language and seek options for those who wish to speak of God in a non-gendered way. Christians have recognized since ancient time that God is neither male nor female, a spokesperson for the church said. Yet the variety of ways of addressing and describing God found in scriptures has not always been reflected in our worship. Absolutely no plans to abolish or substantially revise could be made without extensive legislation. Over recent years, the church has sought to keep up with the rapidly evolving notions around gender and sexuality in recent decades. Last month, the church proposed that it would refuse to allow same-sex couples to get married in its churches, but said priests could bless them in church. It also apologized to LGBTQ+ people for their rejection and hostility. The church has become so captured by woke ideology, they don't realize where they've got to, Tim Deep said in response to the church's orders. Father Gerald Murray rejects the Church of England's exploration of a gender-neutral God. Here are his comments courtesy of Newmax. We now go to cut 4.
This is coming from radical feminism, and it's been around for a bunch of decades. And it's basically the idea that God is unfair by calling himself Father. So in the scriptures, when God refers to himself as Father, or Jesus, the Son of God, says we must pray, our Father. This is unfair because it leaves out women. I reject that completely. God is, by definition, equity, purity, love, truth. There is no unfairness in God. And the fatherhood of God is very important. You know, God made us. In the scriptures, it says God made them male and female. He made them. So if God decided that, we have to say both male and female are very equally important. They're a source of, for us, life. That's how life comes about. So why would we say that referring to God as our Father is somehow discriminatory against women? So I just reject the concept totally.
The latest episode of the Disney Plus children's series Proud Family teaches kids that America was founded on white supremacy and tells white kids they owe black people reparations. The episode, called Louder and Prouder, shows the kids in the series learning about Juneteenth. In the episode, the kids also learn their town was founded by a slave owner. After learning this, the children perform a song about how they view America and its history. The song begins with the line, "This country was built on slavery," which means slaves built this country. The line is repeated several times throughout the children's performance. The song takes listeners through American history as viewed by Marxist and critical race theorists. "We, the descendants of slaves in America, have earned reparations for their suffering," the song says, "and continue to earn reparations every moment we spend submerged in a systematic prejudice, racism, and white supremacy that America was founded with and still has not atoned for." The song calls out white children who may be watching the Disney cartoon, saying, "We made your families rich, from the Southern plantation heirs to the Northern bankers, to the New England ship owners, the founding fathers, former presidents, and current senators." Let's take a listen to the actual recording in the cartoon. Here's cut 5.
This country was built on slavery, which means slaves built this country. Tilled this land from sea to sea to sea. First there was rice, tobacco, sugar cane. Then Whitney did his thing and cotton became king. And we were its soldiers, 4 million strong, fighting for America's freedoms even though we remained America's slaves. Built this country. The descendants of slaves continue to build this. Slaves built this country. And we, the descendants of slaves in America, have earned reparations for their suffering. And continue to earn reparations every moment we spend submerged in the systemic prejudice, racism, and white supremacy that America was founded with and still has not atoned for. Slaves built this country. Not only field hands, but carpenters, masons, blacksmiths, musicians, inventors built cities from Jamestown to New Orleans to Banneker, Washington. 40 acres and a mule. We'll take the 40 acres, keep the mule. We made your families rich. From the Southern plantation heirs to the Northern bankers to the New England ship owners, the founding fathers, former presidents, current senators,
the Illuminati, the New World Order.
Slaves built this country. We had Tubman, Turner,
Frederick D.
Didn't they say Lincoln freed the slaves?
But slaves were men.
And women. And only we can free ourselves. Emancipation is not freedom. Jim Crow, segregation, redlining, public schools, feeding private prisons, where we become slaves again. As we celebrate Juneteenth for the umpteenth time, our account is still outstanding. Cause this country was built on slavery, which means slaves built this country. And we demand our 40 acres and a mule. Bump that! You can keep the mule.
Keep the 40.
We're taking our freedom.
Conservatives reacted harshly to the blatant political indoctrination being peddled by Disney. Jack Posobiec said the episode teaches kids to hate themselves and their country. "Imagine paying money to Disney to teach your kids to hate themselves and hate their country," he wrote on Twitter. The popular conservative page @InWokeness called the scene blatant anti-white propaganda. Jeremy Boring, the CEO of the Daily Wire, used the story as an opportunity to market the company's upcoming children's entertainment content. "DW Kids is coming, not soon enough," he tweeted with the clip from the Disney show. Talk about blatant anti-white propaganda from none other than Disney. Since 2018, children at Leipzig Elementary School have been invited to attend a program called Christian History Class. It was basically a voluntary Bible study. The classes were held on school property during school hours without incident until now. A parent reportedly complained that her child felt left out after she refused to allow him to attend, and now the Ohio School District is facing the wrath of atheists. The Freedom from Religion Foundation, a Wisconsin-based gang of atheists and agnostics, fired off a nasty letter threatening to sue the school district unless they ended the class. It does not matter that Leipzig Elementary School allows parents to opt their children out of the religious class, Attorney Samuel Lawrence wrote to Superintendent Greg Williamson. Voluntariness does not excuse the constitutional violation. The FFRF said the child who was forbidden from attending was allegedly bullied and assaulted. However, there is no police report or any other report that verifies that information. The FFRF has a notorious history of targeting school districts in small towns that don't have the resources to fight back. Typically, their aggrieved victims are anonymous. And that's exactly what happened in Leipzig, Ohio. The school district backed down and said they would no longer offer the Christian history class on campus during school hours. A public elementary school is no place for Bible study or any other religious evangelism, says FFRF co-president Annie Laurie Gaylor. Schools exist to educate, not indoctrinate. We're glad the district is now ensuring a captive audience of small children will no longer be proselytized. What a word. Gaylor and her gang of godless thugs were reportedly triggered because the Christian children participated in the shoebox ministry outreach and sent 100 boxes overseas to impoverished boys and girls. Oh, what a horror. Of course, that's talking about Operation Christmas Child and when the shoeboxes are being handed out. Wrapping up this episode of our Woke News Brief with some positive response from a well-known star, Bethany Hamilton, a famous Christian surfer, is standing up for women in her sport after the World Surf League announced it would allow biological males to compete in women's competitions. Hamilton went so far as to say if the rule remains, she will no longer surf in competitions sponsored by the organization. In a video, the surfing champion voiced her concerns with the rule. Hamilton began the video by assuring viewers that she tries to love everyone, but felt she had to speak up. I feel that I must speak up and stand up for those in a position that may feel that they cannot say something about this, she said. I think many of the girls currently on tour are not in support with this new rule, and they fear being ostracized if they speak up. Hamilton also suggested the policy could be detrimental to the future of women surfing. I think it's really hard to imagine what the future of women surfing will be like in 15 to 20 years down the road if we move forward in allowing this major change, she added. But we are seeing glimpses of male-bodied dominance in women's sports like running, swimming, and others. The athlete also posed a series of questions to the World Surf League regarding the policy, asking who is pushing for this change and if it is better for women in the sport. How is this rule playing out in other sports like swimming, running, MMA, she asked. Have any of the current surfers in the World Surf League been asked what their thoughts and opinions are on this new rule before it was passed or announced? Should there be a conversation with the 17 women and all of the men on tour prior to a rule change such as this? Is a hormone level an honest and accurate depiction that someone indeed is a male or female? Were some of the questions that she brought up. Here's Bethany making her statement on this matter. Here's Cut 6.
Today, I want to address the news that the World Surf League has officially made the rule that male-bodied individuals known as transgender athletes can officially compete in the women's division. The World Surf League says they are following the Olympic guidelines. While I address this issue, I want to be clear that I strive to have love for all of mankind, regardless of any differences. But this concerns me as a professional athlete that has been competing in the World Surf League events for the past 15 plus years, and I feel that I must speak up and stand up for those in position that may feel that they cannot say something about this. I think many of the girls currently on tour are not in support with this new rule, and they fear being ostracized if they speak up. So here I go. Questions I have that I want to consider with you. How is this rule playing out in other sports like swimming, running, MMA? Have any of the current surfers in the World Surf League been asked what their thoughts and opinions are on this new rule before it was passed or announced? Should there be a conversation with the 17 women and all of the men on tour prior to a rule change such as this? Is a hormone level an honest and accurate depiction that someone indeed is a male or female? Is it as simple as this? Who is pushing for this huge change? Does this better the sport of surfing? Is this better for the women in surfing? If so, how? How did whoever decided these hormone rules come to the conclusion that 12 months of testing testosterone make it a fair and legal switch? Why is the WSL's statement about trans women competing with women, and yet there's no mention of converted women competing with men? I personally think that the best solution would be to create a different division so that all can have a fair opportunity to showcase their passion and talent. And I think it's really hard to imagine what the future of women's surfing will be like in 15 to 20 years down the road if we move forward allowing this major change. But we are seeing glimpses of male-bodied dominance in women's sports like running, swimming, and others. My hope is that if I ever have a daughter who is competing in surfing or any sport, and also for all the aspiring young generation of women, to have a bright and promising opportunity in her ambition to be the best of the best woman in her sport. I personally won't be competing in or supporting the World Surf League if this rule remains. Thanks.
Hamilton suggested creating a separate division for trans swimmers instead of allowing men to compete against women. Franklin Graham, the president and CEO of Samaritan's Purse and the son of the great evangelist Billy Graham, voiced his support for Hamilton in a Twitter post. At Bethany Hamilton is speaking out against a new rule the World Surf League has put in place that allows men to compete in women's competition. Who makes these rules anyway? I don't understand why all women don't stand up and revolt, Graham said in the tweet. Hamilton lost her arm in a shark attack while she was surfing in 2003. Despite her injury, Hamilton went on to become a legend in the sport, winning many championships even after the attack. Her story was told in the hit 2011 movie Soul Surfer. I'm proud to say Bethany has a good head on her shoulders. Well, that's going to wrap up this edition of Woke News Brief. Hopefully you guys stayed with me through this whole thing, and I'm sorry it was so long. Of course, the first 20 minutes of this was kind of my explanation of why I have taken this project on. And I just want to randomly do this about every month or maybe every other month. I want to put out a Woke News Brief. And I just hope that this is an eye-opener for you guys and to understand the world that we're living in and this battle that we are raging right now against Satan and his satanic forces. As Christians, if we don't stand up, we're going to lose the battle. And we know that the end days are here. We're totally understanding of what's going on. The Bible has told us all of this is going to take place, but it's still not our place just to sit down and fold when the enemy attacks. We have children and grandchildren to protect, and we need to make sure that they are protected to the fullest abilities that we have. And of course, the main weapon that we have is prayer. Going to church, reading our Bible, keeping our lives in line with God and the precepts that He's put before us and that path that He's laid out for us to walk. And I just pray as I leave this week that you guys would take the burden like I have. This stuff angers me when I see what's going on because they are undercutting our religious beliefs and trying to totally rewrite history and the way that we were created and how we are here and the purpose for why we are here. And the Christians as a whole are coming under a huge attack. So I hope that you glean something from this week. I hope that you'll listen next time that I have one of these. Of course, next week we'll be back with a regular episode of Connecting the Gap as we continue our study on miracles. Until then, don't forget that you can sign up for Woke Alerts. You can do that by going to consumersresearch.org/Woke Alert. Put in your phone number, and anytime a company goes woke, they will send you a text about that. And that way you can avoid purchasing from that company again as a boycott to show them your stand for biblical principles and to live accordingly to how God wants us to live as a Christian. Well, I'm out of here until next week. Please keep this ministry in your prayer. Go to my website, connectingthegap.net, for all the episodes we have of Connecting the Gap and that we'll have in the future of our Woke News Brief. Until then, don't forget that God's Word never fails us. God's Word has stood the test of time, and through Jesus' death on the cross, He has connected the gap. You've been listening to Connecting the Gap podcast. I'm Daniel Moore, the host for this podcast, and I personally thank you for listening each week. In this world, there are many disconnects that cause chaos in our lives. This podcast is birthed from the desire to share hope and restoration of the power of the gospel by being transparent and open in our biblical walk with God. Each week, we take a few moments as we navigate God's Word and peer into other people's testimonies and encourage each other to connect the gap. We upload a new audio podcast every Thursday and a video version of it on YouTube and Rumble. We are also on the Christian podcasting app Edify. You can subscribe to our podcast on many of the available podcasting platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Deezer, Spotify, Google Podcast, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, and many more. We are also available on your Alexa-enabled devices. If you would like to give us feedback or would like to contact our ministry for any reason, including prayer, visit our contact page at www.connectingthegap.net and send us a message. We hope you are blessed by this ministry. This is a production of Connecting the Gap Ministries.